Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important segments. The first is in reference to the political situation of the country and, of course, the upcoming Senate elections as well, with regards to, of course, different political parties vying for the top seats. There are a number of factors that are, of course, are going to be playing a very important role, especially in terms of the candidates that are going to be backed by different political parties and what exactly is going to be the scenario in each of the provinces. In light of this, there is also, of course, the situation with regards to the reserved seats, which is very, very important as far as the numbers are concerned in the Senate polls. And for this, of course, all eyes are also on the development of the case in Peshawar High Court that has earlier reserved its verdict on the case, which is looking into the oath taking of the members of the Provincial Assembly, so that, of course, the numbers in the Senate are impacted. And this is something that the opposition has also talked about and has mentioned that this is something that is going to affect the Senate polls as well. And we've seen that the High Court was then moved with regards to making sure that whatever aspect is to be taken into account is there. And it is going to be something which, of course, then will result in whether or not we're going to be seeing certain members of the party emerge victorious and what exactly is going to be the way forward in terms of legal avenues for different political parties in this one. So we'll focus on that, and also in terms of what is going to happen early April with regards to the Senate polls and how different political parties will be vying their candidates, and whether or not any of those who have already submitted their nomination papers are already creating a ruckus within political parties as to who's supporting who. So this is something that's going to be the focus of the first segment of the show today. This next one is going to take a look at the current situation with Afghanistan. Of course, we've been talking about the fight against terrorism. Pakistan, of course, has been dealing with that for quite some time now and has been dealing with a spike in these activities in the recent times as well, and of course has asked once again from the Afghan Taliban regime to ensure that their soil is not used against any other territory, and of course to have that protection guaranteed unless, of course, there is going to be any sort of violation in this regard. Pakistan has already responded and has made it clear that there will be no tolerance for such activities within the country. However, there is also, of course, this emphasis that Pakistan wants peace with Afghanistan, and this dialogue needs to continue and diplomatic channels need to be open. And on that front, we know that there were talks held in Kabul between the leadership of both the countries. We've seen the foreign secretary from the Afghan side and the commerce secretary from Pakistan speaking in Kabul, talking about what is going on and, of course, improving trade relations between the two countries and making sure that there is a collaborative front moving forward as well. But how much of that is going to trickle down into counterterrorism activities and what sort of protection measures are going to be guaranteed by the Afghan Taliban regime in this regard is going to be important. So that is going to be our focus in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Faisal. And for our first segment regarding the Senate elections and the Peshawar High Court proceedings, we've been joined by Mr. Muneeb Qadir, who's a political analyst and legal expert, and also Nouman, Muhib, Muneeb Kakakhel, who's also the advocate High Court. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And Kakakhel Sahab, let me start with you with reference to, of course, what has been happening. We've talked about this before in our show as well, especially with regards to the way things are going to impact the Senate polls. First, what do you make of the current situation and where we stand today in terms of the discussions that have been held with regards to the Peshawar High Court? The verdict has been reserved, but what do you think will be the outcome with regards to the oath taking in of different members of the Assembly that, of course, is going to impact the numbers in the Senate polls as well?
The Peshawar High Court was moved by members of various political parties, especially those who were nominated by political parties to come on the reserve quota to the Provincial Assembly. They decided through a very short order, for reasons to be recorded later, it's two-pointed judgment, rather relief given to other political parties. The first one is that the Speaker is to summon and follow the order of Governor of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and summon the Provincial Assembly in order to administer oath to the Provincial Assembly. That is relief number one. The second relief is that those members who are to be given oath, they are also to be allowed to take part in the Senate elections. Because you see in the Provincial Assembly of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the majority seats are with Sunni Ittihad Council by the support of political party that goes by the name Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, of course. So the seats, the reserved quota is of immense importance to the opposition parties because they do not have a lot of votes to have a seat or two in the Senate from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. and have their own political party members in the Senate. So having reserved quota, reserved seats for them now, that is about almost 14 for general seats, women, technocrats, and minorities. They would have a member or two for those seats as well. So as we see things today and the judgment of Peshawar High Court, uh, we see that the members who were being refused, rather a delaying tactic was being used by the governing party in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. These people will be given oath before the Senate election. They will sign their rules before the Senate election, and they will take part and cast their vote in the elections.
Right, absolutely. Muneeb, with reference to, of course, the way that we have seen different political parties vying for these places, and of course, the concerns with regards to reserve seats being talked about in terms of the impact it will have on the numbers as well. How do you think that now that this direction has been set moving forward, and prior to the Senate polls, of course, this has to be undertaken, what exactly then will be the impact that this will have on the overall numbers that we'll see in the Senate?
I believe that this is straight out of the PTI, rule book of how to manipulate any election. I mean, be it Senate election or be it even the vote of no confidence, which are taking place in 2022, to somehow sabotage any attempts at, dethroning them or to take away the political monopoly. So they are quite much prepared to violate every single rule. Now, the thing here is that, the KP Assembly Speaker, Mr. Babar Swati, has been doing is very reminiscent of what the Deputy Speaker of that time, Mr. Kasisuri, had done in 2022, albeit in a different context, in order to avoid, the vote of no confidence against the then Prime Minister Imran Khan. And what they are trying to do, ironically, is, I'm saying ironically because they have been saying that the recent National Assembly elections were rigged. But actually, this is what I call rigging, that when you are under a constitutional obligation to administer oath to, the KP Assembly members elect, those who have gotten their seats or on the reserved and the women's seats and the minority seats quota, you're not administering the oaths. The Secretariat is not calling the session, despite the governor of KP having also directed the Secretariat of the KP Assembly to hold a session. So what then you are trying to do is that you are trying to rig the results that would be forthcoming in the upcoming Senate election. You are actually trying to eradicate the KP Assembly opposition from the voting process. They form part of the Electoral College, which is going to select the Senate members.
To what effect, to what gain can, how much of this manipulation will actually result in anything?
It's going to harm the possibility of, those who are going to be getting the general seats in the Senate from KP. What it's going to do is it's going to become a PTI Sunni Ittihad Council dominated, at least that particular quota in the Senate from KP. That would be dominated entirely by the PTI backed and the Sunni Ittihad Council backed candidates. You are trying to eliminate any possibility of JUIF, PMLN, People's Parties, candidates coming in through, coming in for general seats and through general seats in the Senate. So this kind of manipulation is exactly what I call rigging. And so, the political party which has been talking about forms 45 and 47 and manipulation, they themselves are doing manipulation, broad daylight. I mean, even the Election Commission of Pakistan has iterated today that they have the jurisdiction to direct the speaker to convene the assembly session to, administer oaths to the members of KP Assembly who have been given the quota again, by the ECP itself. So it means that the people like Babar Swati and Deputy Speaker of KP Assembly, they cannot just get away with their attempts at rigging the Senate elections. And I hope that they are not able to do that.
Right. And Faisal, I want to understand this further because I understand that there may be manipulative tactics underway by different political parties, and we've seen that previously, but are they not bound by the legal and constitutional requirements at this point? How much further can they even get?
Yeah, of course, they are bound by the legal frameworks of how to conduct the elections and all. But when it comes to, looking at the overall political situation, it was highly expected, especially when we were going through the reserve seats case cases, and of course that case is important for Sunni Ittihad Council in KPK, because they believe that if that case is not getting them through somewhere they want, then of course they'll be having a number of seats going to the opposition parties, because we already know that People's Party and rest of all political parties, they were obviously receptive towards it to get more of the seats inside even if they are reserved ones, they will be going for it, so that they want to have a balance in KP assembly. And if we look at the point of view from PTI backed Sunni Ittihad Council, they believe that if that number is disturbed, I mean pendulum is disturbed in the KP assembly, then of course they won't be getting the right number which they are expecting to have in the Senate for themselves. But there is another thing which is quite important, that people like Senator Talha Mahmood, who used to be a part of JUIF before, they have quickly shifted their parties. I mean, now he has joined the People's Party, so it is believed that he would be, of course, going for an Senate as well. And if we deep down look at the sort of his influence in KP and his influence within the JUIF which he had before, and now he is in People's Party, I think it was a very smart move of People's Party to attract him. And of course definitely People's Party is going to sort of offer him the Senate seat from there. But how do they do it? Maybe they have their own framework and own homework which they have done, especially when we talk about Senator Talha Mahmood. He
is good.
Senator not Talha Mahmood, he has actually his groundwork as well. So it is quite important in coming days to see how things move. And we shouldn't be forgetting that already a statement actually came from JUIF that was related to they will not be appearing for these by-elections. Reason being, of course, they are in a protesting mood, and they have already announced that in coming month they will be, of course, coming out on the roads,
launching a campaign.
Launching a campaign as well. And of course they want to have their own movers and shakers on ground to have their sort of political ground as well. But so far, of course, these sort of problems, I am seeing that there will be, more problem in KP rather than the other provincial assemblies or national assembly. But all eyes on KP assembly.
What level of problems?
Level of problems that, of course, there are more stakeholders. If we look at the government itself, it is a strong government out there. KP government is entirely in the hands of PTI-backed Sunni Ittihad Council, and of course they have their own influence on ground as well. And at the same time, if we look at the other parties, they don't have that kind of influence right now. But of course, when it comes to Senate's election, I am seeing that this decision which would be coming out on the reserve seats, it would be pivotal to for these Senate elections.
Right, absolutely. And Farrukh, I'd like your perspective on that as well, with reference to not just these reserve seats. Of course, we've seen, as was mentioned earlier by Muneeb as well, the way that we've seen PTI or the Sunni Ittihad Council moving forward with different tactics. But I want to understand then, when we talk about the Senate polls and we talk about these reserve seats, was this not something that had to happen anyway? And if that was something that was a given, then what aspect out of this entire exercise is gained, or to what end was this exercise even conducted with regard to any particular tactic? And add to that what the Peshawar tribunal has also done to accept certain nomination papers that were earlier rejected by the ECB. Does that in any way add to the kind of stance that the PTI or the Sunni Ittihad Council have at this moment?
Right, Sana, thank you very much for the question. I think it is a complicated question, but I will try to actually take a detached view from the above and with a holistic perspective. Everything that has happened, that is happening now, everything that has been happening in the past 2 years, two and a half years, that has been instructive in many ways. How? Because it has shown how ambiguous certain parts of your constitution are. Every time somebody tried to, maybe the deputy speaker that Muneeb Sahab was talking about, who actually tried to sidestep a vote of no confidence, maybe the then Chief Justice of Pakistan, who actually tried to reinterpret and somehow reconstruct the certain aspects of our constitution, was particularly Article 63, maybe anywhere else. It seems that the key guardrails in our democracy and our constitution are missing. And in the absence of those guardrails, every time whenever there is a kind of situation that you think is against constitution, you go to constitution, what do you find? You find that the constitution is missing in specificity. And with that kind of a situation, things keep on going worse and worse. We have seen this master class about abuse of power, particularly coming from PTI as well. Then of course other elements haven't been actually left behind. They have also tried to challenge in the same way. And that actually brings us to the question of constitution. Why do we need a constitution? Because in the absence of a constitution and defined roles, what happens in the society is that the powerful get their way. And if the powerful, and by the way, we keep on speaking from a high moral ground, but if I were to be tested, Sana, with power, and that's why I keep on praying that I never go close to power. If you go close to power and if you have power, why would you not abuse power that you need? So right now what PTI is doing or SIC is doing is totally understandable, because they think that this is how things actually work. And the answer or counterpoint that they get, for example, their party not getting their nomination, their symbol not getting that kind of reserved seats, everything actually revolves around the same problem. If you actually treat the constitution as a joke, then the constitution is going to treat you as a joke as well. And this has been happening repeatedly. The only problem is, and that actually is where your question is so important, what is PTI going to gain out of it? Let me refresh everybody's memories. Before May 9th, whenever PTI leaders were summoned in courts, what happened was that there was actual physical threat by mob that used to accompany these people, and there were times when the court was in session and waiting for the leader, but he could not step out of the car and reach the justice or the court, because there was so much mob around. So it actually brings us, and this pressure, again, mob pressure on the courts. Now there is a mention or somewhere of Peshawar High Court in your introduction as well. Where is it located? It is located in Peshawar. Where is the government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa? It is in Peshawar. And remember, whenever you are in power, you have the capability of the government to actually bully people as well. So do you think that in the absence of these guardrails, there won't be any pressures that they are there?
So you think there are pressures on the court from the government?
At least Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government must be there. Elsewhere it might also be there, because I don't know, I am just pointing out the absence of guardrails. And that's why I keep on urging all the lawmakers, do your best to ensure that next time you amend the constitution, you have enough leeway that these guardrails and these defined roles are placed, so that no abuse can take place. Because there are two countries that should give us great example of how just assumption of these guardrails have destroyed their polity. Number one, America. In America, nobody thought that whatever happened on January 6th was possible. But it happened because there were not defined precautions against such a measure. Similarly, in India, Now that their enforcement division is actually going haywire, abusing power and even keeping, head of a party and a CM, serving CM, hostage. In that situation also you have to ask, if you don't have constitutional guardrails, what is the point of a constitution? So this is the whole thing. If today anybody thinks that they are suffering and they have been on the receiving end, first thing they need to do is ensure that there is a well-defined part of the constitution or even the court's judgments that defines clearly what are the demarcations of power. Otherwise this abuse will continue and we will keep on debating it, because in the end, by the way, because you said what is the point, I think this is that's why I'm worried that PTI does not learn from its mistakes. It keeps on trying the same way, and it is on the receiving end, but in the end, because you are also abusing power, in the end the more powerful will win and you will be vanquished. So what is the point of prolonging this misery of your own supporters?
Exactly. And with your permission, Sana, I wanted to go to, this question, this pertinent question about whether Peshawar High Court is under pressure or there can be any pressure from KP government on ground. Of course, we know that they have the numbers in terms of protesting and all. I wanted to go towards, the right person for it. And
he's already smiling.
Yeah, he's already smiling.
The implication is I'm the wrong person. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, he's already smiling. And Nouman, I wanted to obviously, get your view on it, whether it is the case or it's else.
Whether the judiciary can be pressurized through mobs or anything, I believe otherwise. Because I think ever since the PTI have formed government in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, they have not been getting any relief from the Peshawar High Court, because in the reserved quota seat, the judgment came against them. Then there was this other case filed by the other political parties with regard to the vote taking ceremony. The judgment did not come in their favor, despite they having made a complete stage for it that they would get a decision in their favor. So I believe otherwise. But Farrukh Saab explained it very beautifully that there needs to be a constitutional restraint for people as to how they have to act when they are in power. I think Pakistan have one of the most lengthiest constitution in the world. It's one of the countries with a constitution that focuses on each and every aspect with regard to good governance. But we as a nation, I would say with apology, or lawmakers, we are so intellectually dishonest that we have been amending the constitution. Or I would go back to the first Constituent Assembly when Mr. Jinnah passed away. Maulvi Tamizuddin became the president of the Constituent Assembly. Ever since then, we have had constitutional issues, and we have been making constitution, then abrogating them, then amending the constitution, and then interpreting it in such a way to favor one person or one political party, not keeping in view anything for the betterment of the public.
Right.
So
I'm glad, Nouman, you're talking about this, and this maybe diverging a little bit from our main topic today, but I want to explore that further in terms of what you talked about the Constitution. While it may be one of the lengthiest ones, is it also one of the clearest ones, especially in terms of what you talked about in terms of interpretation, and the fact that in a lot of these cases, most recently also if we look back, a lot of this boiled down to what the articles have been interpreted about and whether or not it's clear what they're saying.
As a lawyer, we say that it's very clear. There is no ambiguity. But when we want to create an ambiguity, like I said, we are intelligent, we are intellectuals, but we are very dishonest when it comes to using our knowledge and intellect. So there have been a lot of instances of interpreting the Constitution. We have been interpreting it, then misinterpreting it, then undoing the previous interpretation and coming up with another interpretation. So that is what created the ambiguities in the Constitution.
Whose fault is that exactly?
Well, I would hold the government, the lawmakers at fault, and the judiciary as well. Mainly the judiciary, because it's a role of the judiciary who have to interpret the constitution and bring it in conformity with each another, every article. So we have to plain read it. It's not like you can independently read one article of the constitution and forget about the rest. We have to read it as one paper, as one document. And now when we read it, it's completely unambiguous. There is no ambiguity. But when
The
we want to,
Constitution, I'm sorry, just to understand your point, Constitution is not ambiguous at all.
well, there may be, see, like I said, if you want to have a positive interpretation of something, you can do it. But every political party have been interpreting it in their favor. So when you want to interpret something in your favor, obviously two political parties will have two different.
Nouman, won't you agree that if something is open to many or such interpretations, then it in effect is ambiguous?
Well, yeah, that I would agree, because we have a law completely, a full-fledged law for how we have to interpret a law or the constitution for it.
And Nouman, shouldn't it be interpreted by the judiciary itself and none others?
And by the way, I totally agree with you when you talk about amendments, especially our constitution has become a patchwork quilt. But with due respect, even the framers of this constitution were not very clear on many things. That's why within hours, within days of constitution, it was amended. And those amendments have continued. But then again, with due respect, when you talk about something as simple as fundamental rights, when you read even those sections, all of a sudden my constitution halfway through changes its mind and starts lecturing me on my responsibilities rather than my rights. Is it not true?
I think it's something positive. Amendments cannot be negatively taken, because we, as lawyers, we say that a constitution is a living document. It has to change with time. It has to change with changing circumstances, how the world goes about each and everything. So amendments is not a bad thing. Now, when we say there can be positive amendments and there can be negative amendments, when I say positive and negative, I talk about the impact of the constitution on the people at large. So now when we come to the interpretation, let's say we have a positive constitutional amendment, then it goes to courts like it was put forward by the member Raja Saab. It goes to the court, and the court interprets it in such a way to make it undemocratic or make it something that kills its scope, the scope of the amendment itself. Then we have a problem. Then it goes once again to another round of interpretation by the same court, and the same court says that, oh, the earlier interpretation that we had made, that was wrong. It was ambiguous. We had killed the letter and spirit of that very amendment. Now we are going to amend it in this particular way. So that is where the problem lies. We are not sticking to one point.
And is it the court's job to actually amend the constitution or amend certain things that are there?
See, there are things that have been put forward in letter. It's the court's job to interpret it as to how it is to be implemented. So with regard to the implementation, when you interpret it that this is to be implemented in a certain way, you change its whole meaning that way. So through interpretation, we can
write the law.
I'm anxiously waiting for Muneeb's response on this whole.
You know, this has become a very interesting jurisprudential conversation, and this reminds me of a certain Mr. Ronald Dworkin, whom I had read. You know, when I was just a law student at that time, what I'd come to know of was that it's legal arguments what make, you know, the bread and butter, the day-to-day living of a lawyer. So in fact, law is all about interpretation. You know, the rules that you see in a constitution or in a statute on their own don't mean anything until and unless an interpretation is brought to it, which fits with the overall scheme and, you know, underpinning ideology of that particular legal system. So in that regard, I believe that judges do make law. They say that they are sitting there only to interpret the law, but I think that every single time that they come up with a judgment, particularly in a hard case where there is ambiguity in a legal, you know, provision, that is exactly where judges are making law. And Pakistani judges have been making laws all the time. You know, just as Mr. Nouman has here mentioned, I can think of the fact that we had the judiciary telling us 6 years ago that they could, under the constitution itself, under Article 62, Article 63, they could just permanently bar a person from ever standing for public office, and now they've said no, there's a 5-year limit to it, and that interpretation was wrong. So this going back and forth has been very much a
dissenting note as well, Muneeb. There is a dissenting note as well. There is an honorable justice who disagrees with that, right?
Yes, but the majority, that's what I'm saying. The majority, like a pendulum swings, they go from one position to another, depending on, I don't know, whether the political exigencies of the given situation, but that is exactly what judges should not be motivated by. Concerns which are extra legal, which are political, those are not the judiciary's concerns. So although under the guise of interpretation, they might be making laws, that much is fine and accepted even in other common law systems. But judges entering into the territory of politics and shaping up the interpretations accordingly, I think that's a no-go zone for them. And that explains why, despite having a very coherent constitution here in Pakistan, in a lot of situations, our judiciary and our, case law is faring worse than a country like Britain, which doesn't even have a codified constitution.
Right. Thank you very much, Muneeb and Nouman. I think we need another dedicated show to have this discussion, but unfortunately, that's all that we have time for. But thank you for being part of the debate and discussing this with us. But coming back, you want to add something on this topic before?
Yeah, I very quickly just wanted to humbly submit that, of course, if something was abused by the judiciary, that again comes back to the question of guardrails, right? If you make laws, the lawmakers make law and appropriate laws, and it is imaginative based on common sense, then it cannot be abused. I mean, I can say that every court makes laws, but with due respect, Dawkins or no Dawkins, the fact is that you are essentially applying the law. Applying is the law is not making the law. It is just case by case interpretation of the Constitution that is correct, and that is their job. But whenever you actually assume that there is going to be restraint from one side or the other, and you don't ensure that there is a clear pathway defined by the Constitution, anybody who is in power will try to abuse it. It can happen, it has been happening, and it is happening even in the US and India that I gave examples of.
Yes, absolutely. But again, what Muneeb said about the interpretation and making laws is also an interesting point.
Again, in Pakistan's case, when your constitution is ambiguous, of course, courts do whatever they want to. But this is my point. This is not actually what should be the practice. The actual job of a court is to read the law, actually interpret it or apply it case-to-case basis, use their own mind also on a given case, and that's it.
Right, absolutely. Coming back to the Senate polls as well, Faisal, I want your take on the different political parties and the nomination papers that we've been seeing so far, and whether or not it's reflecting any particular party stances or creating any ruckus. We've heard some reports with regards to the candidates that have come forward, that perhaps some of the PMLN workers, for example, are not happy with that. What do you make of different political parties now vying for the Senate polls?
Yeah, of course, obviously, if we look at, certain names coming from PMLN, of course, their workers, they have reservations on them as well. But same is the case with the People's Party. But right now, of course, the names which are coming from Sunni Thad Council, I mean, there are certain names that even are obviously currently disappeared from the screens and from the reality. I mean, they are still in the hideouts. And of course, their names are being echoed as well. One of the names actually came out, he came out yesterday. I'm talking about Shibli Faraz. He appeared, and of course, he appeared in the courts. And now, of course, it is being seen that he is going to contest. And overall, if we look at the names which were given by Sunni Thad Council backed by PTI, there are no sort of reservations on them from within the party and from within their workers as well. But of course, their names are either of course, their names are such that are having still cases against them, related to 9th May, and still they have to face them cases. So this is the current situation. And if we look at JUIF is in a sort of mood of confrontation right now, and that confrontation is not only for the provincial side, it is for the actually overall federal side, and that is quite important as well. Right.
Right. Very quickly,
Yes,
Sana, I
you
just
disagree?
wanted to disagree with the fact that people in PTI are agreeing with the list. Actually, there's a very intelligent way of, auditing all the numbers. And this is where actually the whole thing is done. There are seats which are safe. There are people like, moneyed people like Zulfi Bukhari very easily get in. But then there are contentious seats where you don't have the numbers, like technocrats in Punjab, like women in Punjab. So what do you do there? You actually give them, give women that are perhaps incarcerated as a token or, indication of your support, but they are not supposed to get into the Senate. They are going to lose. So once again, it is the upper house was supposed to be territorial house, but once again it has become the house of privileges, and the richest and the most connected ones get in.
Just the one-liner, Sana.
Yes.
Democracy is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. You know why? Because
When it works for
Sunni Ittihad Council members, they are going to vote for Allama Nasir Abbas. This is beautiful because his own party, of course we know that his own party is from a different sect, and Sunni Ittihad Council is going to actually vote for him. Normally, it has never been seen that one religious political party would be voting for somebody who's the opposite religious sort of thought. So
By the
this
way,
is amazing.
Sunni Ittihad Council as it stands now is not a religious party. It
Yeah, it
might
is
be
not.
a clothes
Yeah.
that they are wearing, but it is
Of course,
essentially
it's
PTI.
PTI. Yeah, it's PTI.
And by the way, again, I don't know what democracy has to do with sectarianism. I think all members should be members. Zulfi
Yeah.
Bukhari is also of the same sect.
Yeah,
So
same
what?
sect.
Right, so we're going to end the conversation of Senate polls here, but of course we'll have much more to talk about in the coming days. We are quickly also, before the end of the show, going to take a look at the current situation with Pakistan and Afghanistan, and of course our counterterrorism activities, which is very important with reference to what has been recently going on in Pakistan and what Pakistan has achieved previously on this front as well. Faisal, we know that there has been a conversation with regards to both the sides talking about improvement in trade and bilateral relations that was held in Kabul very recently. This is in the backdrop of what has recently happened with Afghanistan as well, and the terrorist hideouts within Afghanistan, and then of course statements coming in from the Afghan Taliban side as well. What exactly do you make of the fact that we still have diplomatic channels and that Pakistan is still emphasizing with regards to cooperation and peace in Afghanistan? How much of this effort do you think will actually trickle down into the kind of reassurance and protection that we require from the Afghan Taliban?
So now I see it very positively, and when we talk about Pakistan's stance has always been the peaceful stance. Pakistan wanted all of the problems and challenges to be resolved through peaceful means, and this is what Pakistan has been doing in past. But of course, when we did not get any sort of positive response from the other side, then of course to save ourselves and to safeguard our homeland, of course we have to go to every length to make sure that first of all we are protected, our masses are protected, our population at large is protected by the menace of terrorism, which Pakistan has done very recently and in past as well, and I'm seeing that happening more and more in future. I'm talking about the surgical strikes and the tactical weapons being used against the hideouts of the terrorists, which will be used again in future if this spree of terrorism is not stopped from within Afghanistan. And I think this meeting was very positive, because Pakistan has put something on the table in front of Amir Muttaqi and said to him that this is what we offer you, and the trade which we offer, it's a natural trade, Sana. It's a natural trade that goes back to centuries. And of course Pakistan is pivotal when it comes to Afghanistan's trade, because majority of the items of daily usage actually go from Pakistan side. Even there are of course the wheat goes, and even the gas cylinders as well to run their stoves, they go from Pakistan side as well. So what I'm saying is that this is the time that Taliban regime sitting in Kabul, they need to of course understand this as well, that these are the dimensions they have to look into, and of course Pakistan is offering to enhance this bilateral trade, and that is going to benefit Afghanistan and their government as well. At the same time, seeing this, this actually came from the Amir Muttaqi side when he said that the challenges which are being faced by both of the countries, they will be, sorted out through the negotiations. I am hoping that in coming days we might see a positive sort of development from within Afghanistan. That would of course include the shutting down all of these factories, the terror factories that are still running across the border, and they must do it, because this is not only in the favor of Pakistan, but of course their own as well.
Right, and I understand what you're saying, but Farrukh, what I want to understand also is when we talk about airstrikes or intelligence-based operations against terrorist hideouts, and what Faisal was saying that he expects this to continue and increase in the future, isn't this still plan B though? Isn't plan A to ensure that the assurances from Afghan Taliban regime are actually met, and that they're able to provide the kind of assistance that they should in terms of protecting their soil being used against Pakistan, or are we just moving forward with a simultaneous strategy or a different one?
Right, Sana, the problem with Afghan Taliban's assurances is that they are never public. They come in private, and whatever it is, I am not privy to them, right? So I can't actually comment on that. Usually what I get is a lot of hostility from their public speeches and the kind of communication that they go on. But I believe, and I think every student of statecraft actually believes, that there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, only interest and their convergence and divergence. Afghan Taliban might have whatever they have as their interpretation of their national interest. We know what ours are. And we have to keep on striving for them, and that also includes terrorism, fighting terrorism within Pakistan. And if there are havens in Afghanistan, we will have to, first of all, ensure that the border is hardened. Secondly, if there is an incursion, we have to actually stop that, even if it takes a kind of surgical strike or whatever strike that Raja Faisal was talking about. Having said that, there are two aspects that you have to look at. All over the world, trade is thought to be the best way to actually build confidence. It is one of the best CBM possible, because when you are trading, there is hardly, minus one example, that when Hitler attacked Russia, they still had the pact, and they had the bogies carrying coal to Russia, and even then they attacked it, right? But usually it does not happen. When you have trade, the possibility of a full-scale war is very limited. Now, trade actually benefits us as well, but when you want to have trade, I'll actually go back to the age of 1990s. When Soviet Union actually dismembered, and our first instinct was that there are countries beyond Afghanistan that are Central Asian countries, and because that is the cradle of South Asian Islam as well, they are our natural born brothers, and we have to connect with them, and somehow to intellectually migrate or mentally migrate to Central Asia from South Asia, because here we have this identity crisis that always India seems to be poised to take over or threaten to deny your identity. But then what we saw was that the Indians actually started sabotaging any attempt to connect. Now the problem is Pakistan has had the reality check for past 25 years since it has been fighting terrorism. Now identity is not the issue, existence and betterment of ours, Afghans and Central Asians is. So what we need to have a conversation with Indians also about is stop actually trying to trip us and work with us. We can actually build a region that benefits everybody.
Will that conversation go somewhere?
I hope so.
I hope so.
All right, all right. Of course, Pakistan has always talked about peace and dialogue, and this is something that we have been talking about with the Afghanistan side as well. And we hope that, especially with regards to fight against terrorism, we're able to achieve a breakthrough. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. As always, that's all that we have from the show. We'll now see you tomorrow.